I was in immigration detention for approximately 16 months, from March of 2008 to July of 2009. Due to a wrongful drug conviction in the state of Maine, I was subjected to the immigration system after spending time in Maine state custody. I spent just under 2 years in Maine state custody and entered immigration detention on March 10th of 2008. It's important for people to understand that most people have no idea about the mental tortures and the conditions to which immigration detainees are subjected. Most immigration detainees assume that they will be subjected to a fair process in which they will have the opportunity to seek legal counsel, get information, have access to their families, and they will have some kind of just adjudication of their immigration removal hearings. And that is not the case. Most people are purposefully prevented from having the resources that they need in order to have the best chance to put their best foot forward towards being released once they are in immigration detention. One of the ways in which the U.S. government does that is to move people to faraway places with respect to their detention. I was in 7 different states due to immigration-related detention in total. So I started off in the state of Maine, then I went to Massachusetts, then to New Hampshire, then to Pennsylvania, down to Texas, over to Louisiana, back over to Oklahoma, and back down to Texas ultimately. Because of the abuses in the system, many immigration detainees are forced to give up on their families. They are forced to sign out and just choose to be deported because they cannot take the conditions, the unjust conditions, which include not having legal resources. The reading materials are limited, the access to attorneys are limited, and this is even worse. This is highlighted when they are brought thousands of miles away from the Northeast, for example. Many minority detainees, and most of the detainees are minorities, and I think that's something that needs to be clarified for a lot of people. What's going on is a program of ethnic cleansing. And it's very clear to me, once I was on the inside and I started noticing who was being deported, who was being subjected to this harsh treatment, who was suffering the most, probably 99% of the people who are suffering through this process, or who have been suffering, or who have suffered, are minorities, and we're talking about mostly Latinos, Hispanics, and blacks. One of the things that I think is important to establish is that there is no higher conversation that can be had with respect to immigration detention than the humanitarian issue. Humanitarian rights trump all. There is no other conversation that even needs to be brought up. It's not about visiting detention centers, other than making sure that detainees are physically okay. Really, the conversation is not about addressing some of the minor issues that really cloud what is the most important issue. The most important conversation is the banning of detention as we know it today. There is no humanitarian reason whatsoever to subject any man or woman or child to indefinite detention. Unless deportation is imminent, there is absolutely no reason to have someone in detention. So I would personally ask everyone who's involved in the struggle to think about what it would mean to realign your arguments and your conversations with people who are exposed to this just horrendous situation, and really think about how to engage people, not just people who are involved or impacted directly by the immigration process, but people who don't feel they need to think about immigration, or people who have misconceptions about who is in immigration detention. There are people who are spending 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years in immigration detention, and their deportation is not imminent. There is no reason to actually hold someone for that long unless deportation is imminent. By imminent, I mean maybe a week to 2 weeks in terms of actual deportation at the most. There is no reason for Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents to pick anyone up or hold anyone unless they know that they actually have deportation papers in hand and potentially maybe even a flight schedule. So what it comes down to is that the prison industrial complex, which encompasses the immigration industrial complex at this time, need to be addressed. What's happening is that people are losing their lives, their livelihoods, their families are being destroyed. American families are being destroyed. It's very clear that it's American families, not migrant families. And whether it was migrant families or American families, there is really no distinction between human beings. Families are being destroyed, and that's really what matters. And that affects everyone. At some point down the road, these will be charges on the U.S. government that the United States population has to deal with. So there is no higher level of conversation other than the humanitarian conversation with respect to immigrant or migrant detention. And I'd like everyone to consider realigning their conversations accordingly. I would personally like to thank Migrants United Against Borders. I would like to also thank Families for Freedom in New York. I would like to thank Detention Watch Network. I'd like to thank Grassroots Leadership and all the other organizations who are now banding and getting together to change and transform what is immigration detention in the United States today. And I look forward to hopefully getting through the current process that I'm dealing with now. Many of you know that I am dealing with a wrongful indictment for assault while I was in ICE detention, and I'm hoping to be meritorious and victorious with respect to an upcoming trial if these charges do not get dismissed. So I look forward to hearing some good news about some of the changes that are happening in the months to come, and hopefully we can transform as quickly as possible what is immigration detention today. Thank you.